So I say, "Yes, Daisy, I'm your sister. Net is your brother. You had 2 little brothers, but they went to the other place before you were born." And she says, "Can I talk to them when we get to the stone world?" Just like that. She's so bright. Then she really warms up and gets deeper into the subject of our family. And I think, well, she has to learn sometime, so I try to explain as best I can. She says, "We all came out of Mum, didn't we?" And I say, "Yes, that's right." So then she asks, "Which man is our dad?" "Your dad is Spark," I say, "and Net's dad is Toe, and my dad was Talon, from the Eagles. The 2 little brothers were from Half Shield." She thinks about this for a while as we walk along. "Mum named lots of people," she says. "That's right, sweetheart," I say. "She got to choose many times because she was an important person. Our family have special things that we do, which is why we get to rest in the tomb between journeys." "Well, I have special things to do," she says. I pick her up and give her a hug and a kiss. "I expect so," I say, "but don't worry about that now." She puts her head back and looks up at the sky. "I can see the river," she laughs. "I can see the pike." "No, you can't," I say, and I tickle her until she giggles and squirms her way back onto the ground. "Here," I say, and I give her the reed hat I had been twisting as we walk. "Put that on. The sun's getting hot." She pops it on her head and skips along until she tires, and I pick her up again. We are all crowned with pointed green roofs now. If someone was to look down from the top of the hand's fingers, they would see a line of hats like the tops of tiny village homes, bobbing and moving through the long grass. The men have started to sing as they jog forwards, shoulder to shoulder, jostling to be the first to the heel of the hand. All the women clap them along, and Daisy joins in, perched on my shoulders, her little palms slapping together above my head. A happy scene, Mum, very happy. The cold river swirls and ripples far above. The hand's great fingers tower over us. I wonder which brave person's going to be the first up. The Sky Machine by Martin Liddermont, performed by Phoebe Lawrence. Season 2, Chapter 7, Choices. "Up you go then," said Ash to me and Yarrow. We both stepped back and looked up at the first finger. It stood, tall and hard, poking into the curdled sky as if it was stirring up the clouds. I think our mouths were hanging open like we were 2 dead fishes. Not a good look, Mum, not a good look at all. And what was Ash doing there anyway? How had she got to the fingers before us? Could she fly now? Maybe she took a ride on the pike. Perhaps that was it. The pike had swum down from the cold river, and Ash had clambered onto her back, and then the pike had gone back up into the sky, and... Stop it, Gilly. What does it matter? Ash was there at the base of the first finger before we all reached it, and that was a fact, as clear and as sharp as the finger itself. And she wanted Yarrow and me to go up the thing. Go up where only the men were supposed to go. "How?" I began. But then I shut up, because there was the answer. 2 ropes hanging down the side of the finger. I squinted, but I couldn't see where they went to, or how they were tied. I shot a look sideways at Yarrow, and she was squinting too. She looked angry and serious. "You know what to do," said Ash. "First to bring down an egg." "But the men," said Yarrow. "They do the race, they bring the eggs." She sounded like a little girl complaining that life wasn't fair. I turned my head to look at the others. My tribe was standing at a respectful distance. No one seemed inclined to interfere. Even those men who had already put on their wings and had painted their hands and feet with the white clay, ready for the climb. Everything felt spoiled, Mum. I knew Yarrow would be crying inside from the wrongness of it. Then, beyond the tops of the fingers, the sky started to twist. It was so beautiful, Mum. So lovely. It wasn't like seeing the cold river that flows above the world from side to side of the day and night. The cold river is like clear blood in the skin of the world. It's a vein full of brightness, and it's clearer than the clearest stream you could possibly find in the greenest meadow and the best day of the year. And they swim in it, the pike and the others like her, beating up the clouds with their shiny tails and sending the spray of rain splashing down over us. And sometimes they fight, and when their scales fall, glittering to the ground, they are snow and hail. No, the sky above the fingers wasn't like that at all. It was like broth being slowly stirred in the biggest pot in the village. It was an eye opening in an endless curl of long, dark hair, and the eye staring down at us. In the middle, in the blackest bit of the eye, there was a bright flake of the sun broken off. It was quite still, while the clouds turned and swirled around it. We took the ropes and we climbed. It wasn't too bad, as long as you looked in front and made sure your toes were in the ledges before you reached up for the next knot in the rope. Once, about halfway up, I glanced across at Yarrow and saw that she was a bit below me. Her wings bounced as she pushed and pulled herself upwards, and they scraped against the rock. The clay was cracking and falling off her face. I thought she might be saying something, but I couldn't hear. Then we were at the ledge, and Ash was waiting for us. Of course she was, because that was impossible, and only impossible things could happen now. The great slow whirl of clouds continued above us. Below, the world was as tight and taut as the skin of a drum. The sun and cloud shadows beat on it. I could see tiny faces turned upwards. I imagined eyes straining to see. But we would have been hidden on the ledge, halfway up the first finger. Ash pointed across to the next finger, and the rope bridge that led to it. Beyond that, the other fingers of the hand leaned outwards, spread wide. The frail bridges drooping between them were like cobwebs swept from the branches of an autumn tree, but always climbing up and up, ledge to ledge, until at the top of the last finger would be the nests and the sacred eggs. The birds that made their homes there belonged to the old gods. They had started to rise up, soaring and swooping. Ash said, "Gilly, you go on. Yarrow, you wait here." I stepped onto the swaying bridge and held tight to the hand ropes. Ash followed me. We were about to start across, and the sky came down around us. There were 2 bridges, side by side. There should have only been 1 bridge. The clouds lay below, pale and rippling. They also spread out above, milky white. And in the space between there were 2 bridges where I was sure there had only been 1. That wasn't all. Yarrow was gone, and the fingers were bleeding fire. Thick fire welling over their tops and running down their sides, following long cracks. The fire pooled on the ledge behind me, and I could feel its heat on the back of my legs and my head. But it did not reach me or Ash. It ran round us in 2 half circles, joined up again, and then flowed on in 2 channels on either side of a tall stone, heading towards the wooden posts where the thick ropes that held the bridges were tied. "Look," said Ash. In the middle of one bridge, a man struggled on his back, writhing like a caterpillar stung by a wasp. His arms and legs were bound, and his eyes were wide. He was staring in terror at the fire as it made its way towards the posts and the ropes. On the other bridge, 3 women and 2 children were also bound. They saw Ash and me and started crying out to us. I took a step forward, but the heat rose up to stop me, and Ash's hand was on my arm. "Not like that, Gilly," she said. You can stop the fire, but you will have to push the stone so it falls one way or the other to block its path. Be quick now." I looked at her face. The fire shone in her eyes and her hair was the colour of blood. I looked back at the two bridges. The thick, burning stuff crept down the twin channels, making its slow way towards the man and the women and children. It cooled as it moved, as though each long line had grown a black snake's head. Grey scales fell from where it heaved forwards and cracked, but underneath it was as bright and as yellow as the sun. Ash said, "The stone is finely balanced. Push it and it will fall. You must choose, Gilly." "But I can't," I said, looking at the man. He clung to his bridge. His face was twisted in terror. Every movement he made caused the ropes to creak and pop. Sparks flew up from the fire where it crawled and split and pushed onwards. The heat was scorching. "They will all die if you do nothing," said Ash. On the other bridge, the women and children struggled and cried. Their eyes pleaded with me. I stepped forwards, put my hands on the stone and pushed as hard as I could. It toppled and fell with a crash, blocking the path of the burning stuff as it made its way towards the children. The man saw and whimpered in fear. The fire reached the posts of his bridge. The wood and the ropes caught alight. I saw the smoke, and scores of small, hungry flames ran out towards him. And then, as he screamed, the clouds above and below me came together, like the two halves of an oyster shell, and I was floating in a cool nothingness. I swam there, in the cold river, until I felt solid ground under my feet. "There was only one choice, Gilly," said Ash, quietly. We were standing together, facing Yarrow, with just one bridge gently swaying in the wind, the sky back in its right place, and no rivers of fire. Yarrow's hands were red. Blood coated her arms to the elbows and dripped to the ground. Her face was splattered with it. She looked at me with empty eyes, and it was like she had become a different person. "Gilly," she said. "Yarrow, what's happened?" I asked in a whisper. She looked around as though the answer was somewhere nearby. Then she sat down heavily on the ground and started speaking to the earth. "There was a bridge made of rope," she began. I opened my mouth, but Ash held her hand up to stop me. "It was on fire where it was tied to the edge," Yarrow continued. "There were people on it. There were children." She stopped and looked at Ash with a silent appeal. Ash stared at her, and Yarrow continued with an effort. "And there was a wooden frame, a hurdle, with a man stretched out on it face downwards. He was bound to it by his wrists and ankles. He was this high above me." She gestured vaguely over her head. "And there was an empty bowl," said Yarrow. "A big one, two-handled, set underneath his neck. And Ash said I could stop the flames if I filled it with... if I cut... if I poured..." She stopped and shook her head. "Could you have done it, Gilly? Or did you do it as well?" "I pushed a stone," I said. Yarrow gave a short laugh. "You pushed a stone? Well, then you can blame the stone for whoever died." She jumped up and turned on Ash. "Is that the answer then, Ash? Your new gods give a little push and things move to their natural end no matter what?" Yarrow screamed her questions at the server. "What kind of gods are they?" "Someday you will be just like them," replied Ash. Yarrow reached out and grabbed her arm. Her bloody fingers left marks on the white cloth. Their eyes were locked. "Yarrow, this is what it means to be a leader," said Ash. Yarrow stepped back and clenched her fists. "The leader?" she said. Well, it's what I wanted. Suddenly she was laughing, but it was mad laughter. Come, said Ash. We go down now. She handed us 2 eggs. At the bottom, the tribe knelt to us as we held the eggs out to show them. One of the women took mine, a man took Yarrow's, and they were passed round, hand to hand, held up close to see, gently stroked, smelled, the fragile shells tasted with the tips of tongues. And before each person handed their egg to the next, they pressed it briefly to their chest, next to their heart. Yarrow watched and never said a word. Her mask of cracked mud had become expressionless. Her reddened hands were held still by her sides. My love for her rose up again then, and I felt it like an egg itself inside my own chest. If it breaks, I thought, I wonder what would come out. This is what it means to be honoured by the gods, cried Ash. And the tribe all said with one huge, rushing voice, yes! The Sky Machine is written by Martin Liddeman and performed by Phoebe Lawrence. Music by Purple Planet Music, Daniel Birch and the Pangolins. Special thanks to Stratford Youth Theatre, which provides high-quality drama workshops for children and young people in and around Stratford-upon-Avon. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can listen to the first season at skymachine.podbean.com or search for Sky Machine on any of the major podcast platforms.